Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're joined by a very important guest. Very glad to have on Senator Roy Blunt, the senior senator now from the great state of Missouri. Welcome to the show.
Not the senior senator for very long, but I'm getting used to it, and great to be with you, Scott.
Let's talk about something that has been a big topic in this state and something you've worked on for a long time, and that's infrastructure. Something that Missourians, whether you're in rural Missouri or urban Missouri, you got to care about how you get transported around. What can you do at the federal level that impacts the state now?
Well, I think, first of all, I think location is our biggest single advantage. And Missourians that want to think about job opportunities and economic opportunities need to figure out how we take the most advantage of that. The interstate highways come together, the rivers come together, the railroad systems come together here. How do we integrate all of that? And how do we create a future of opportunity? If you're going to make something in America today, the first two questions you'd ask yourself, and a lot of people do want to bring those manufacturing jobs back to this country, would be, can you pay the utility bill, and does the transportation system work for what we want to do? And if you can't answer, if both of those questions aren't yes, we can pay the utility bill and do what we want to do, yes, the transportation, only then do you get to the third question, which is workforce and ability to prepare, ability to do that. So transportation, really important to us. It matters to the whole country. It matters more to us. And we need to take it really seriously as we look at the manufacturing opportunities, the world food need opportunities that are right out there. These are natural markets for us, but transportation and keeping our utility bills at a reasonable rate are two of the entry-level cards you have to be able to play.
Let's talk about something that goes back. Your family even has a history in is agriculture in the state of Missouri.
Right.
It's ag policy right now at the federal level is a little tumultuous. What's the state of affairs?
Well, trade policy is tumultuous as it relates to agriculture, and opening markets are the right thing for us to do. Getting markets back when you lose them aren't as easy as it would be to get them to start with, whether it's the grain markets, the soybeans, the corn, the other things that we have made such success exporting, or the livestock, the chicken, the pork, the beef. Opening up new markets really matters there. So that's one of the reasons that I'm always looking to see how can we find more opportunities to sell things rather than create barriers. But hopefully we're going to begin to get to the conclusion of some of these trade agreements, and hopefully we'll see that the President's strategy was exactly the right strategy. I've had some concerns about it because I've never been a big tariff guy, but maybe we'll come to some conclusions here pretty soon. No doubt the Chinese are not trading fairly. Also no doubt, though, that we really benefit from particularly the Mexico and Canada market that's been established, and it's critically important to us. Missouri would be the 5th most negatively impacted state in real dollars if NAFTA just went away, for instance. So we have a lot to lose. We also have a lot to gain if we can get the new agreement done. And remember, Scott, world food demand is about to expand exponentially. It's going to be twice as big 50 years in 2050 as it is right now. World food need will double by 2060. We think the demand will double quicker than that, but I don't think there's ever been a bigger economic driver, nor is there a single state that's better positioned than we are to take advantage of this unbelievably big daily economic activity all over the world of just people feeding themselves and having food choices.
When I was down in the county you were born in, Webster County, they were very proud to claim you. They were excited about one thing more than anything else that was going on in politics, and that was rural broadband. The legislature is trying to make a way for the co-ops and other companies to bring, I think that is when we built the highway in Butler County down a 4-lane. The growth wasn't in manufacturing. It was in people that could live a rural way of life and work from their home because they had quality internet. What is the status of that, and when can Missourians start to see a way to live in places like Webster County, but be able to have a high-level job?
Right. I was just at a meeting with the Secretary of Labor, who we had here for a couple of days, and this came up talking. This happened to be looking at Northeast Missouri jobs, but looking at jobs where the jobs that are currently there are a long way from people that to have to drive to get to those jobs. Rural broadband is part of that. We're behind in our state, but both the legislature here and the congressional delegation in Washington has made it a big priority to get caught up. So you do have the opportunity to live where you want to live. You also have the opportunity in a highly competitive marketplace to know as quick as anybody else does what the prices are out there, to know if back to agriculture, if you're in that field and you're not wasting your input cost, you know exactly where your piece of equipment is and how much fertilizer, whatever you need right there, as opposed to what you need 100 yards down the road. And that's what agriculture is going to be like in the future. But the ability to live where you want to live, to take advantage of communities and social infrastructure and schools and water systems and other things already there, rural broadband can make a big difference there. In addition to the quality of life, it makes a big difference, frankly, in whether the kid who lives 2 blocks from school, who has broadband, has the same nighttime advantage as the kid who lives 2 miles from school or 20 miles from school. And so we need to be working on this, and our state's taking it very seriously. We're a little behind. About 37% of rural Americans don't have high-speed internet. 51% of rural Missourians don't have, and we need to close that gap and then eliminate the rest of the gap to where everybody has access to the kind of communication you need today to really be able to be part of a competitive economy.
Seems like in the modern era, every technological advantage has frankly benefited the cities and urban areas more, and kind of taken population away from rural America and rural Missouri. This might be the first real technological change that brings people back to rural Missouri, if that's where they want to live and the kind of lifestyle they want to live.
That's a good way to look at it. That is a good way to look at it. And obviously technology, particularly the communications technology, is easier to put in place where there are lots of people in side-by-side houses, and when there are people who are some distance from each other. You know, the utility pole, if you're hooking up to the utility pole and there are 10 houses between 5 utility poles instead of 50 utility poles between 2 houses, obviously it's easier to do that. But
that's how the co-ops exist. I mean, it was a nice time to reflect with Barry Hart, a legendary Missourian, retiring, and now Caleb Jones taking that mantle up. It was, I think a lot of folks took a second look, and it really is a way we brought power to the farms the first time. Now it's a way maybe to bring internet to the farm.
Well, certainly as a competitor, they're in a great position to compete, and I've been one of the people advocating to be sure they were in a place to be one of the competitors. Says we can do this and we can do this more effectively. We can be that first provider. We already go to the last mile. We already go to the last house. And so I do think you see a real role there developing for.
Give my chance to shout out for Ozark Border, my co-op back home. Let me ask you a question on why you're here about President Trump. You know, he's a figure that certainly takes up not just the political sphere, but frankly culturally, and maybe he's a bigger part of people's lives than any president, not in a wartime, in history. What's it like working with him kind of behind the scenes? Well,
you know, I had a unique chance to start working with him because I was in charge of the inauguration when he was sworn in. I wasn't in charge of everything that his committee did, but I was in charge of everything that happened at the Capitol, the actual inauguration itself. And so Abby and I had a chance to spend some time with he and Mrs. Trump the couple of weeks before the inauguration. Fortunately, that day went well, and he felt good about it, so we got off to a good start. And the results of what the president wants to do, time and time again, proved to be the right thing. He just does it a little differently, maybe not as careful about how he explains what he's going to do, and doesn't always do it exactly the way he thinks he's going to do it. Somebody that had been in government longer might take longer to think about, okay, how am I going to explain this, rather than sort of, I'm just going to have a constant conversation with the American people, which you're exactly right. That's what he's had. He decides virtually every morning what the news and a whole lot of other people are going to talk about that day. But when you look at this economy, you know, in our state, 3.1% unemployment. We've had 9 straight months now of more jobs open than people looking for work. That has never happened before. The first month has never happened before in the history of the country. Now we're 9 straight months into that kind of vital, booming economy, talking to people who are in the workforce preparation business. One of the things that kept coming up the last couple of days with the Secretary of Labor was we got a lot of people at work who don't have all the skills they need to have to be at work. That would not have been the case in the last president's economy. You had a lot of people had a lot of skills who couldn't get a job. Now you have a lot of people have a job who don't have all the skills they need. And what can you do to do workforce preparation with people who are already at work so that when the economy takes a turn the other way at some point, they have the skills they need to stay in the economy that they found an open door and a way into.
I found that he has a special relationship with folks in like Eastern Jackson County, Jefferson County, the Boot Heel, that most Republican presidents or politicians, period, have never really had from Washington. It's an interesting dialogue he does have with Missouri in particular.
Well, and I think in our state's one of the states where his numbers continue to go up. You know, the day he was elected president, his approval rating in Missouri was, I think it was 42%, but he won the state by 19 percentage points that day. By the election 2 years later, his approval rating in Missouri was 10% higher than it was on election day. And so I think that there is a sense that this guy is not a typical politician running for president, and Missourians like that.
We got you here. You're one of the few people in the history of the state that's ever been a Missourian representing folks here that has been in the leadership in both chambers, and how you're getting to change the Senate rules some. Can you give folks a quick look into what that's about?
Well, I think my friends on the other side, the Democrats, have really abused the rules to try to, one, use up floor time, which means we can't get to other legislative issues, and two, frankly, to make it hard for the president to really take control of the government that the American people have voted to put him in control in. I put a bill out of my committee a year ago to shorten the debate time. We didn't have the votes to do that, but we're going to try it again to where instead of having this 30 hours of debate required, if anybody insists on it, and Democrats have insisted on it 128 times. You do that times an intervening day times 30, you've got a lot of time used up to really, except for Supreme Court judges, circuit judges, and cabinet officials, down to about 2 hours of debate. When Ronald Reagan was president, the average time from the day somebody got out of the committee, where the questions are asked, the investigation goes on, they have to be voted out of committee, the average time from the time somebody got out of committee until they were voted on the Senate floor was 5 days. With President Trump, the average time, was 55 days. The four previous presidents, the majority leader had to actually go to the procedure of forcing a vote a total of 24 times, where you file a cloture motion, is what it's called. With President Trump in the first 2 years, and that was the first 2 years of all four of those terms, that would average of 6, I think. With President Trump, it's 128 times, not 6 times, 128 times. And we need to change that. We're going to try hard to change it. And you know, the Senate's always been a place where the minority was protected, so that the minority had a chance in our system to be heard. And the minority only loses those protections when they abuse them. And clearly, the Schumer-led minority has abused the protections of the minority in a way that made it hard for the president to put people in place to run the government the way he'd like to see it run, and hard for the Senate to get to anything else, because unlike the House, you know, we're in the personnel business as well, and who does these jobs, and by the way, who does the lifetime jobs on courts? 2 Supreme Court judges, 85 other federal judges already confirmed for life, but there are 135 vacancies still, and we have the opportunity and the obligation to fill those with, in my view, constitutional conservatives who will try to decide what the law says, not what they think the law should say.
Well, Senator Blunt, thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Hey, Scott, great to be with you.